We demystify what goes on behind the therapy room door. Join us on this voyage of discovery and co-creative conversations. This is The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast, with Bob Cooke and Jacci Jones.
Welcome back to The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors, with myself, Jacci Jones, and the wonderful Mr. Bob Cooke, as always. Looking wonderful there, Bob.
Oh, thank you for those kind words. I don't actually feel that one because though I've started walking again, I had an allergy attack this afternoon.
Wow.
And if my voice is a bit allergic, that's right. And I think it's because of all the leaves that are falling off and the pores in the leaves and the change of the weather. I don't quite know.
It's gone flipping cold, hasn't it, to be fair?
I haven't bring allergies on, so I don't know. But I've taken antihistamines, so I'm a little bit better. And I had a massage for an hour, which helped a lot.
I'm sure it did.
Both combined, I feel a lot better. So, but if my voice is a bit allergic, that's the reason why. But I like this podcast. This podcast here is fab. So if you introduce it.
So this is episode 181. We were
Hey!
200. I know. It's. You said when we were offline that we've been doing this now for 4 years.
Yes.
That's shocking, isn't it?
Well, it's some body of work.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I read somewhere that the majority of podcasts only do 8 episodes and then they don't do anymore. But I think we've missed one over the whole 4 years. But other than that, religiously, every week we show up at 6 o'clock on a Thursday.
Well, as I said off air as well, congratulations to you. And I admire your commitment to the podcasts.
And your titles are wonderful. Which leads me nicely on to this one, which is 5 traps to avoid for effective therapy.
Well, let's reel them off. I'll start with one. I mean, I've got tons, but I'll start with one.
I'm sure we'll end up doing more than 5.
Here's one. A really big tip for therapists, beginning and more experienced: do not take on clients that are beyond your developmental level.
Yes.
Now, beginning therapists, that's an easy trap to fall into. People on placements, you see, like at our institute or in their training, they often have the training provider, or in my case, it's me, who would do an assessment with the clients. So they would actually get the benefit because I wouldn't send clients to them beyond their developmental level. However, when they start privately themselves and they are the person doing the assessments, maybe a different story.
Yes.
And they may be tempted for whatever reasons to take on clients that actually are beyond their practice remit. And when that happens,
there's a fine line, isn't there, Bob, in getting the training and starting off in a new area and having the experience to do that, if that makes sense.
Say a little bit more about that.
Well, I suppose when we're new, we're just kind of looking generally at things. But then if you start to specialize in a certain area, like I used to work an awful lot with families and children and adolescents. So I did training in that. So there's going to be a period where I'm not as skilled in one area, maybe, even though I've done the training, I need to get the hours in the practice. So there's going to be a period, but it's making sure that you're equipped and you've got the training and the supervision.
Yeah, and I think that's very important. And also training around assessment.
Yeah.
That's the issue, I think, for me, is training programs that don't have enough modules on assessment, or and if they do, person has either forgotten the assessment weekend, perhaps wasn't there for various reasons, and maybe when it comes to taking clients privately, it was perhaps a year ago in their training, so it's not being present in their mind, because you have to do an accurate assessment, and you have to say no if you think it's, belongs to your
Absolutely.
developmental level. Now, the problem, I think, is that often beginning therapists get swayed by economic reasons, number one,
Yeah.
because they're just setting off their private practice and they want to get some money back and they want to get hours and different things. So they may be tempted to take on clients that might be too well beyond their pay grade in many ways, beyond their developmental level. A second reason they might do it is transference. They might actually buy into a person's, processes or be seduced. These are all unconscious reasons.
Yeah.
They may have part of their own therapy not being completed, so they might be vulnerable to certain seductions. They might have not worked out all their narcissism traits. There's lots of reasons why I think that beginning therapists may take on people which actually are too much for them.
I've had people in the past, more so in the early days, I think, that have asked me to do something that I knew was out of my
Remit.
remit.
Mm.
But I think they wanted me to do it because I was local to them and it was easy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They would say things like, well, shall we just give it a go and see how we get on? And I'm like, no, it's out of my, specialized area. I'm not qualified to do that, so I wouldn't be comfortable. But they were quite persistent in trying to get me to take them on.
Good. I mean, I'm glad you said no and took care of yourself that way, and also help the clients, because you wouldn't be able to provide the services needed for what they wanted.
Absolutely.
I think when people present with high complex needs, I think the beginning therapists who have just graduated, for example, from their training process, need to think twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, they might think, oh, well, I'll take them on because it'd be good for experience, or I'll take them on because I need the hours, or I'll take them on because I need the money, or I'll take them on for whatever reasons. I think it's a trap, because if they've got too high complex needs, you're not helping them and you're certainly not helping yourself.
No, no, no. You're setting yourself up to fail, really, in one way or another.
Yeah, you need straightforward clients when you first start out to get confidence and experience, I think.
Yeah.
And if you take somebody with high complex needs, and you know yourself, just like you just said there, you knew yourself that that person was outside your remit, and you said no,
Yeah.
which is the correct thing to do for yourself and for the other person.
I think sometimes the danger is that you don't know that there's something lurking underneath with the client that you're not aware of when you take them on. They might come with one thing and something else rears its head. I don't know.
That is always what is, but
say.
I come to agree more. I mean, I do all these assessments, and I think that if you have had some training on how to do assessments, you should two things. One, you should, dig out your assessment notes, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
But you need to have a good intake sheet that starts to weed these out. Things like, have you, to the client, I mean, the assessment intake sheet, have you had psychotherapy and counselling before?
Yeah.
Number one, because then you'll get some gleaning into whether they've been in the system before, whatever. Definitely have a good assessment intake sheet. And if any signs of too high complex needs, refer on or say no. No, even if they persist, I'm glad to hear that you said no.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because I definitely got a feeling it was just for ease. I was local to them rather than I was, able to help them or whatever. It was more of a tick box exercise. So yeah, it wasn't for me.
No.
And it was around addiction and alcoholism, which I don't feel that I'm
Specialise in anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Number two, then.
Yes.
This is a very common trap again, and this is to do with boundaries and structure. Now, in the 100 hours most therapists have to do in terms of a placement when they're in their training program, hopefully they will have learned this. through experience, and it still seems to crop up. And that is that when you start working with a client, you need to keep to the strong boundaries. So you stop after 50 minutes, you start on time. If they come late, then you still stop on time. You provide a structure, a safe environment for the work in. All these things which are so important. Money, you take the money before the session. All these things which need to be put into place, or they become traps. Because if you allow those issues I've just talked about to slip, then all of a sudden it'll become a chasm.
Yeah. And they don't always like it either when you're hot on your boundaries. Do you know what I mean? With times, if they're late, you finish on time anyway, and things like that. The client doesn't always appreciate that.
No, because they're lacked out.
Yeah.
I would suggest, by the way, that the therapist has a contract
Yeah.
stipulating all these things.
Yeah.
And some therapists will ask the new client to sign it. Someone will accept verbal agreements, but it needs to be, I think, personally written down and given to the client.
I have it all in mind about if they're more than 15 minutes late, then the session's cancelled or whatever.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when the therapist starts to, for whatever reason, usually transference reasons, allows the process to slip. Oh, we can just, oh, yeah, oh, we'll just go over another 5 minutes because I can see that it means a lot to the person, or whatever it is they say to themselves.
Yeah.
Certainly, it becomes a real problem in my experience.
Yeah.
Becomes a real trap.
Definitely. It's like you say, boundaries don't seem that important, but they really are, because for ethical reasons, there has to be a separation as well, around the rules. I think it's really important.
Very important, which leads me on to the third one. And then we'll have some of yours, but another one. This therapist must not take on friends,
Yeah.
members of the same family,
Yeah.
or clients that have got boundary issues in some ways. So, in other words, our friends of, say, a client you already got, or
Yes.
things like that, or the brother and sister of X, or whatever it is. Those things I've just said need to be really adhered to, because otherwise is another trap.
Again, I think people don't actually understand that. Clients struggle with that concept.
Let me give you an example from early on in my history. I don't know how long I've been going as a therapist, but I took a woman on and I thought to myself, she seems familiar. Anyway, I took her on, and about the third session, maybe even the second session in, I realized that she was the sister of a client that I already worked with. She never said that at the assessment.
Yeah.
However, once I listened to her story, I put 2 and 2 together. So what needs to happen is soon as this is an example, this sort of thing happens, is you say, oh, are you the sister of X or whatever it is? Yes. Yeah. So how come you didn't say that when you came here? Oh, I didn't think it mattered. But it matters a lot for lots of reasons, ethically particularly. And I'm sorry, I can't work with people out of the same family. So I ended it. But the listeners out there, don't get seduced into thinking it doesn't matter, because it really does matter.
Yeah. I've had it before where I've had an individual that then wanted to come for couples therapy and don't understand why I can't see them as a couple if I've seen them as an individual, or vice versa. If I've seen them as a couple, then suddenly I will see one of them. It's like, no, it's not ethical. That's not how it works.
Yeah. So these, I don't call them rules, I'll say framework, if you like, need to be kept to. So people listening, please don't, breach them. And don't breach them, because it'll come back to bite you
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah. I think they're really important.
Okay, I've done at least 3 traps. Have you got one there which is different from those 3?
One of the things that I thought about was becoming overly directive.
Ah, in terms of style, that's what I'm talking about here. Say a little bit more.
Just being maybe, dominating the session with an agenda. If you go into it, you know what the problem is or whatever, so you've got an agenda that you're following, and you're not open to, I don't know, the personality of the client. You've kind of got it already set out in your mind, what's going to happen and how it's going to work.
Yeah,
Which
so
I
you've
think
got a
maybe
plan.
in the early days, you maybe tend to have more of a plan.
Yeah, I think it's really important for what he's talking about here. I have 2 maxims that I keep to in these circumstances. One, get to know the story of the client before you decide on where you're going.
Yeah.
Yeah? Does
Yes.
that make sense?
Definitely.
2, and this has always been with me. Therapy is primarily about facilitating the client to have an opportunity to get to their own truth.
Yes. I like that.
Yeah, so you're facilitating the client on a journey to have the opportunity to get to their own truth, not yours.
Yeah. And there's not always a direct path to that. It's a
No.
very winding road, and everybody's different on how they get to their own truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a lot of patience by the therapist, and needs to believe that the process is more important than the content. It needs the therapist to really understand that it's imperative that the client has the opportunity to get to their own truth, rather than the therapist define what their truth is. Because the client has had, besides other things, probably years of people defining their reality.
Yeah. Do you think it's difficult for the client to get to their own truth? It's a long process. It was for me.
I think it's challenging.
I think I thought I'd got to my truth so many times, and then realized that actually that wasn't. It was just another layer of protection that I'd built up.
Yeah, and if you've got the therapist which allows you to find that truth out for yourself, then in that process, you will go to other layers.
Yeah.
But problem is, if the therapist defines the way your truth, then you'll never go to any other layers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's a process, never an event.
Yeah. Love that.
Never.
I'm
Never an event.
always quoting that. So there's something there about the therapist judging or making assumptions that goes along with that.
Yeah, that's my one of my tips of traps. So I'll put it into what you just said, which is my 4th trap, if you like, but a very, very big one. So it goes with what you just said, really. Therapists are not paid, and it's not in the service of the client, to make assumptions. Now, easier said than done, because we've been brought up in a world where we're always making assumptions.
Yeah.
However, and I think it takes quite a long time for a therapist to become skillful in this. So I'm not saying this happens overnight, because, it's not a straightforward process. However, if you start or continue making assumptions about your client's feelings, thinking, or behavior, it will come back to bite you big time. And it's one of the biggest traps in the psychotherapy effectiveness, as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the biggest traps around building up a trusting working relationships, because for most clients, they've had a history of being defined.
Yeah. Do you think therapists that have been doing the job for a long time are more susceptible to making assumptions because they've kind of seen a lot and, do you know what I mean?
You know what I think? I mean, yes, and I think it goes back to the training in many ways. If they've had a training where it's been very important to teach the importance of moving away from assumptions and defining clients, then it's more drummed into them. If they've had a training which doesn't have those pivotal truths I'm talking about, I think it's harder. Okay, let's go into your point about experience. In some ways, yes, because I think therapists can fall into a trap of believing they've been there and done that.
Yeah. Not in a bad way, but do you know what I mean? If you've seen a lot of clients over a lot of years, then there are going to be some similarities between them. But it's about understanding that each
It's a
client is
trap.
individual. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you, by the way. And part of me wants to say to the listeners, yes, you're completely right. Yeah, well, I'll say it. Yes, you are in many ways right. And it's a trap.
Yeah.
If you can't hold on to the fact that everybody's got a unique story and self, and the fact that, okay, there may be themes of familiarity between clients,
Yeah.
and somehow let go of that everybody's got a unique story, I think is a trap for effective therapy to happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there are going to be similarities. You know what I mean? The scripty stuff and the, personality traits and all that. There's going to be similarities, but I love the way that you said that, everybody's individual. And one of the things that always stuck in my mind with my training was think alien. You know what I mean? Don't make assumptions.
Think Martian.
I just get curious a lot of the time. And
Yeah, that's much better. Substitute curiosity for assumptions.
yeah.
Substitute curiosity for assumptions, and you won't go far wrong. And the other thing is, as an antidote to this, is check. If you find yourself making assumptions, the best way through it is to say, and is this true for you?
Yeah.
Check it out with
In
them.
with them. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
all you have to do. Check in with them.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong in doing that.
Yeah. So if you say, you look happy today, follow it up
Yeah.
by saying, is that true?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it might not be.
Yeah.
Just because they come in smiling doesn't mean they are sort of content with their therapy journey at all.
And I think the clients appreciate that as well if you're checking in with them and just clarifying whatever it is. I did. I felt like I was heard.
Yeah. Oh, all the time. Big time.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Another trap is, and I think it's my fifth, but hey, I could go on for a while. It's a very big trap, and that is if the therapist does not continue having adequate supervision after their training. In other words, finish the training, they start a private clinic up, and perhaps, I don't know, money's hard or whatever it is, so they might shrimp on supervision, but that's a big trap, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't help them at all, because if they don't have supervision, they're then in a road of aloneness. They're then in their own trap of not being able to get any feedback. They're then in the road of there's no accountability for the client. They're then in the road of no biofeedback at all.
Yeah.
And then they're really in the road of not being able to check up on their own countertransference.
Which is important. You often can't see it when you're in it, but it's having that third person to look at it.
It's a real trap. And unfortunately, I hear too many stories of people who say things, oh, well, you know, I just couldn't afford it at the beginning of getting clients. So no, I haven't had supervision for 2 months or something. And I think that's a trap in lots of ways, I've just said, even if you only look at it in terms of in the service of the client.
Yeah.
Or even if you look at it in terms of development for the therapist.
Yeah.
So I've given at least 5. Have you got another one?
Absolutely.
Piece of paper?
I'm just looking here. I've put something down about getting stuck in personal thinking.
Oh, tell me more what that means.
Becoming involved in your own thoughts that can disconnect you from the present moment.
Overthinking, do you mean?
Yes, yeah, yeah. But it takes you away from what's going on in the moment, you know, noticing the body language, the changes and everything. If you're in your head too much, you're not actually present in the room, which I think is one of the most important things as a therapist, is to be present in the room.
It's probably the most important, I think, to be in contact
Yeah.
with the client in the room. If you're not, I don't think effective psychotherapy will happen.
Yeah. And it helps build up that relationship as well, I think. That, do you know what I mean? Like I said, being seen and heard and all those sort of things. If you're in your own head and you're thinking about the next thing that you're going to do rather than being in the moment. Because, you know, I can remember in the early days, I had that many plans that, you know, I had in place for what I was going to do. And I never stuck to any of them really, because we'd go off tangent. Something would happen and it'd be like, yeah, well, that was a waste of time because we've gone down this road now. And rather than trying to pull them back onto my plan, it's important that we stick to whatever it is that they're bringing up in that session.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And therapists, especially at the beginning, fortunately or unfortunately, used to have an obsession with treatment plans,
Yeah.
how to do things. And am I doing things the right way or am I doing things the wrong way? You know, it's a developmental process for psychotherapists.
Yeah.
And usually you are correct. They're always thinking ahead. And then in that process, not all therapists. I was just thinking this is the developmental process. But anyway, they often lose contact with the client, and that is a trap.
Yeah. I think it was a safety net for me to just have a plan just in case. Do you know what I mean? That if all else fails, I've got this in place in the early days.
I agree with you. I was just thinking, I said this earlier, but I was just thinking while we were talking, one of the most common traps in my head. I think I've said it. I'm just going to say it again if I haven't. If I have, I'm sure I've said it, but I'm going to say it again. I've heard it so many times, Jackie. That's why I'm just going to say it again. Do not take your friends on for therapy.
Yeah.
I hear it so much. And I don't know why therapists do this, but please don't do it.
Yeah.
It's a trap. I know it's unethical. I know it's unethical, but it's also a trap.
Yeah, but it's more than just friends. I think it's acquaintances.
Acquaintance, that's a good way to look at it.
I think friends imply a close relationship, which obviously is no, but even acquaintances, people
I like the word.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember this. This is perhaps a dramatic example of what we're talking about, but it made me smile. What are you talking about? Yes, acquaintance is a much better word. I did a piece of locum supervision with somebody about 3 or 4 years ago, and the therapist had brought this person in, which was a woman, and started talking about the relationship. And I started talking about the therapy relationship. And I don't know how it got to this, Jackie. It must have been some context question answered, but it came out that he'd had a relationship with her 7 years ago.
Wow.
And he thought, as it was 7 years ago, that it would be fine to take on for therapy. And I'm laughing. And I suppose I'm mentioning it because you are right about acquaintance. It's a much better word. But you'd be amazed how many therapists fall into those sort of traps, in my opinion.
Yeah. But again, I think that there's a heavy slant on the training with that. It
Yeah,
was drummed into us. Do you
yeah,
know what I mean? On our training, what was acceptable and what wasn't, what, the clients that we should see and the clients that we shouldn't.
yeah.
And to start off with, I suppose I did question a lot of it,
Mm.
but I'm glad I did question it, and I'm glad I stuck to it, because it made my life so much easier, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's many things people do, like, double book sessions or come late for a session, all these sort of things. I don't know if they're traps, but that's just general things, and write things down and keep hold of things and this, that, the other. But the real traps aren't those. They are things like making assumptions, having, all the things we've just talked about.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many more. Have you got many written down? I've got some in my head, but
I've got a few, yeah. Over identifying with the clients, again, if something comes up, if you're going
supervision.
through something in your life personally, and then the client's going through something, it's about, again, supervision and understanding and noticing that you are over identifying, and the wires might be getting a bit crossed.
Yeah, you are, and that leads on to the very fundamental one, which is if those sorts of things happen, or like, say, example, I don't know, there's a real personal loss in your history.
Yeah.
You're working with, don't take on someone who's got acute loss, and you may have to take a sabbatical,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Which, again, the clients won't always like, even if it's
No,
in
but
their
the
interest.
worst thing is if it's too difficult for yourself, how can you be the effective therapy that you need to do to give the best services?
Absolutely.
So, for example, if somebody really close to me, well, God forbid, it's not going to happen, something happened to my daughter,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to work.
No.
I would just take probably a sabbatical of a year off or something. So the trap is, if you attempt to just keep working when some things have happened in your life which is so difficult, you're not there for the clients, so you aren't able to, if you've had that type of loss or something dreadful has happened, or I can think of many other personal things. It's okay to refer on.
Yeah.
Okay to stop. It's okay to take time out. It's okay to, because of these things are taking care of yourself. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be the effective psychotherapy you need to be.
Which,
So
again,
yeah.
I think it's worth, maybe planning that you do have a network of people around you that you can refer on to if something like that happens.
Yes, that's a very good
That you've
point.
got friends in the, the psychotherapy arena that they can refer to you, and you can refer to them if anything does happen. Because we do have a duty of care. We can't just say, I'm not seeing you anymore.
No, but you haven't. I agree with you. The first stop is to refer on, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously, I perhaps missed that step out, but you're correct. And then you have to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I suppose the trap is if you don't refer on.
Yeah. So, Bob, again, lots and lots of useful information in that. And
Yeah,
like
we
you
could
said,
talk forever, couldn't we?
yeah, there's probably a whole lot more. So what we'll be talking about next time is, how do therapists help clients understand themselves more deeply?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I've just
like
done a
this
whole
one.
training weekend on that. So that will be a nice one to talk about.
Well, until next time, Bob.
Yes, see you. Have a good week.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week with another episode.